I'm very happy to welcome our panelists to the stage. First of all, Luca Barani, who is a policy officer with the European Commission, more precisely with the General Direction for Migration and Home Affairs. He shares 20 years of experience in advising and supervising activities in EU-funded projects and works. And also, since he is the representative of the European Commission, along with Wolfgang Bode, I would also like to take the opportunity to thank you, because without the funding of the European Commission, of course, MICADO would not exist today. So thank you very much for that. We also have Maria Grazia Montella from the Council of European Municipalities and Regions, which is a European association of local and regional governments, namely the oldest in Europe, with more than 40 European countries as member states. She's also leading the project Include Cities from 20 to 22, in which 8 cities, 4 mentors and 4 mentees engage in a city-to-city cooperation to exchange their experience in integration processes. And then we also have Grazia Concilio from the EasyRights project, which is our sister project from the same call. Thank you for being here with us. And the aim of the EasyRights project is to combine co-creation and AI technology, and to facilitate also migrants' access to services and information in cities. And last but not least, Carla de Tona has already spoken. She's our colleague from the University of Bologna, and she's an independent researcher and reviewer of journals, and has worked in Ireland, Germany, and the UK and Italy. And I will not name all the research topics that she is involved in, because the list is very long indeed. So my first rounds of question would be just you know, you all have very impressive backgrounds, and I could go on for hours with talking about them, but maybe I can ask you to briefly again introduce yourselves, and also the work that you are currently involved in, and maybe also highlight, you know, the most relevant activities that are connected to today's discussion. So maybe, shall we start with you, Maria? I think.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me here. And I see that we have a full Italian panel, so I'm also very glad of that. And yeah, so I'm working for the Council of European Municipalities and Regions. I'm the coordinator of Inclusities project. That is our flagship project on migration. And as was explained before, it's a project that involves associations of local and regional governments, as well as their members who are actually municipalities. So we have 4 cities who are mentors and 4 cities who are mentees that exchange best practices around their needs on inclusion of migrants in their cities. The thing that is quite relevant is that both cities, so both mentors and mentees, are either small or middle-sized city. So we are not talking about big cities here. And this implies a lot of challenges, but also a lot of very good practices that somehow not always get the merit that they deserve. So I'm also on the policy work for the CMR. So I'm the coordinator of the internal task force of migration and integration. So we work for task force. Basically, we are a membership association. So we have almost 12 associations from a bit all over Europe that are involved in the work of the task force. And what we do is mainly advocacy work towards the Commission and the European Parliament. And we advocate for the voice of local and regional governments to be heard on the European level. So that's basically my work.
Thank you very much. I'm working as a policy officer in the unit that deals with integration, and specifically I'm covering the activities and the calls that go through AMIF, which is the Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund. So for me it's very interesting to be here, because this Horizon 2020 project is more from the research and from the offer of user-friendly tools, apps, platforms for migrants. But also what we try to do on the, with the AMIF is also to take care of the other side of the digital divide. So how to improve the skills or the understanding of migrants towards the services that are being more and more digitalized. Specifically since the COVID, we had a huge boost of digital services which are not always designed or taught with the end user in mind. And I would be happy to, to have good news, but the fact is that in February we plan to have a call of AMIF specifically on that, on launch projects, to finance projects that help organizations, municipalities or civil societies to improve the digital skills of the migrants, which is not a monolithic group, as it was already mentioned. You have migrants that are able to code and migrants that are not able to use a smartphone. So migrants is a very diverse group, and we have to also to segment the support that we give to them. Unfortunately, this call that was supposed to go on and to be open today, but Ukraine happens, so it was suspended because the money went to the emergency needs in neighboring countries in Ukraine. But it's definitely something that, at least at DG Home, with the AMIF in financial instruments, is in our mind, because the digital divide is there, is real, but, and I really believe that it's a very interesting project. Also, just to give you an example of what happens when the service is inflexible and it doesn't have the user in mind. In France, for renewals, for when you have the administrative steps you have to take to renew your, I don't know, residence card or your refugee status and so on and so forth, what happens is that the interior minister, the prefecture, puts all the slots for the interview, for the appointments online or in a chunk. And what we see, I mean, I'm taking France as an example, but of course we can talk about different member states. What we witness, what we are aware of, is that there are bots that are prepared in order to harvest these time slots and to create a secondary market where basically these appointment interviews are being redistributed mostly of the time under behind payment. So if there is and if the platform is not designed with the user-friendly in mind, as I said before, migrants are not a monolithic group. There are people that are going to find solutions which are not open, that are not transparent. And so I think that what you're doing here with MICADO is very important, because with the co-design, you also take on board from the start the needs and the problems that migrants have. Thank you very much.
Okay, good morning everybody. Thank you very much for making me here. It was a great honor, and it was such a great honor that actually in Italy today is holiday, and I was supposed to be with my family, but I think there are other families which are very important, and this of the Migration 06 cluster is one of them. We did a lot together. So I am not a migration expert. It's important that I say this because I am an urban planner, and actually I am working on the side of the services. So what about services? And co-design has always been there since I deal with this big issue, big problem, big tragedy of services. And every time I deal with any kind of service, one of the problems is that there are people who are taken peripheral to the way in which we even conceive the services. So from a very old project, 7th framework program project, we deal with this, from the very beginning of the Smart Cities program from the European Union, we were developing services for neighborhood, and in that specific case we were wondering about Muslim women who actually have problem not with the services, digital, they have problems in getting around in the cities because they can't go alone, they have, not all of them, some of them. So our problem there was to make them free enough to circulate and get some experience in the cities, respecting their rules. And so we created, in that occasion, a sort of a body so that they could join another woman. That was critical to get around for shopping, not for dresses, just to the supermarket to get food. So this is not a public service, but a problem that they had, which a service, very stupid, very basic, could give an answer to them. Then always in the direction of creating useful service for citizens and dealing with open data, the open data challenge. We were challenged by a group of migrants who were desperate for, because they could not fully understand how this familiar conjunction procedure works. And we discovered this is not even a service experience. This is a nightmare. So it's a sort of, nested services in nested services in nested services. You have to deal with an amount of agencies which is not even decent to have in front of you with different skills in taking on board the specific necessity of migrants. So there, and that was our very beginning to be a bit more committed in the direction, exclusive direction of migrants. We were developing an app through an hackathon that was trying to guide the migrant, first of all, to understand what kind of migrants you are, because they are supposed to understand everything, to understand what is specific to them. So it's not that you have to understand what to do. No, you have to understand what can be done by everybody, to understand what is specific for you and what you should do. That's incredible. I am not able to do this with any of my personal rights in Italy. This is incredible. So this app was trying to tell them, okay, you are this, and you don't understand the rest. You should do just these 3 steps to achieve this in the right manner. And that was quite useful, I have to say. Not that it created a different procedure for them, but as an easiest way to get in touch with the service, to personalize what is relevant for that specific kind of migrant, to achieve, to get a familiar reconjunction request, not even to get it accepted. So we started the EasyRights project with this experience in our background. We started the EasyRights proposal. MICADO was funded before us. That's okay. EasyRights is trying to do not completely different things, but similar. I see we have already told each other this. Things which can, be somehow, they can be integrated and combined, because we do similar things but in different manners for different scope. But one of the biggest problem is how to create those steps that they have to go through. The first problem is to understand what are these steps. What we tried to do is to apply an artificial intelligence agent that will read, is reading actually administrative documents, to pick up, to capture from these administrative documents what is the pathway for procedures. So what steps, for each steps, what are the key things to be done, what is the step 4, how you should be prepared to that, whether it is related to any relevant deadlines. So, and we discovered that, okay, these steps are not really very clear even to those who are responsible for this pathway, supply side, from the supply side, because each of them has got many tricky things, traps, and so I have to say, first of all, in this direction we were not very successful, because administrative documents are not really made for the scope of getting the pathway clear. And in this direction, an application like the one that they did is very useful, but there are big challenges behind it, which I am pretty sure that are very also clear. So, like, for example, who will update the pathway if the rule comes that will change the process at a certain step with a new trap or with a new... This is very true for any citizens, but very, 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 very true and terrible for migrants. And what we learned from this experience in EasyRights, and that we hope will be there, is that public services, as we conceived those as general procedure, let's say, for citizens to get access to their own rights, because that's what we are talking about. If they have the rights to ask for familial reconjunction, they should know how to do, what to do, and not to be granted by the complexity of the procedure that their process will not be successful. We are developing now a standard for service quality assessment to be submitted to the CEN agency at the European level for services conditions, to create the conditions for migrants to have easy, let's say, access to their rights. And this is also one of the reasons we are delaying our project, because this procedure is very complex, and we hope that some of you would eventually want to support this attempt, because this is a tricky situation. Thank you very much.
So I am presenting myself, Carla de Tona, from the University of Bologna, from the Department of Sociology and Business Law. So I'm actually a sociologist specialized in migration studies for over 2 decades. That's why I have a lot of experience in Ireland, where I worked also with Italian migration, which is one of the silent phenomena, but still we have a lot of Italians here now in the panel, but my expertise is really on Italian migration as well, which is, while Italy has become country of immigration, it never stopped being a country of out-migration. So in Germany, actually, I worked in the Ruhrgebiet, with the University of Bochum. I also did some research on Italians in Germany. But I worked a lot with migrant women, so migrant women organizations in Ireland and in Italy, and the sociology of education. So what happens with foreign students in school, especially in the UK project. So my expertise and what I can contribute, I suppose, to this panel is really with a view of what, in the last decades we have done with migration studies, and how that, reflected, and I brought it to the MICADO project, which, just one element that I can highlight before we pass to the question is really how important in MICADO has been co-participation approach, because with all the limitations, the actual participation of migrants is essential to any project like this that wants to improve the integration process of migrants. There are a lot of limitations, and in Bologna we are reflecting, with some further interviews to those migrants who took part in the piloting phase. We really asked them, what did you feel? Did you really feel you were fully part of this project? And the limitations are unfortunately there and not unexpected for me. They've been there for 20 years because there is a hierarchy of powers. And the main problem I want to share with you, which I see, is the lack of legal status. When we think what we do for migrants, and we do a lot at the European level, and a lot of projects, a lot of efforts, we are committed to that. But there is a fundamental problem, which is the lack of legal status. And whatever we do for migrants, when there is the lack of legal status, and this I mean migrants who don't know where they're going to be next month, women who have to share facilities with other women and lots of children, and they can't even have the mental space to tell us, what do they think about MICADO, because they're occupied with very, very more important things. I'm talking about, young migrants in the refugee system who are moved from one place to the other without notice. And even we aimed in Bologna to include them from the first phase of the public piloting, the testing phase, and include them in the second phase of the public piloting. And we couldn't, because they were not there anymore, and we didn't know where they were. And this is the reality that we have to face when we are talking about migration and migration studies. So maybe I close it here and let Julie and to take over.
I actually had questions in my mind. I will totally reorganize my concept, because I can see that we have very interesting topics where we talk about the challenges, one of them being the financial challenges after projects end, but also how to adopt them in the regions, but and as Luca Barani has rightly mentioned, how we make sure that they also meet the need of the migrants, right? Luca Barani, my first question would be to you. I saw that you, at the Inclusive Europe 22 Policy Roundtable, you presented the AMIF that we talked about already, the Asylum Migration Integration Fund, and I'm very disappointed to hear that it has been rejected, because I thought that we with MICADO were going to also apply for these fundings. So my question for you would be, will this be adopted in the future again, and where are maybe alternative programs, funding opportunities for Horizon projects, European projects, as we all represent them here in the panel?
I didn't say that it was rejected, I said it was suspended, which is a nice way to put it. But the fact is that, this funding is part of the of Action Plan 2021-2027. So basically, this was the first goal that we wanted to put out to finance projects that are helping to bridge this digital divide. Unfortunately, I mean, even if, as it was mentioned before, sometimes at the local, at the national, at the European level, we have changes of political majorities. We try to have an action plan that is long-term, and clearly the digital mainstreaming of services is something that is going to stay with us in the future. So I hope that this specific call, how to improve IT skills for the migrant communities, is going to be adopted in the next year, perhaps. But this, frankly, I don't know, just because we are now reshuffling all these funding possibilities around the Ukrainian crisis. So this is a short-term crisis that basically put all the best laid out plans in, so to speak, in disarray. However, and also here also ask for help from the colleague from which is more working on Horizon. In Horizon, there are tools like I think the Booster initiative. You have also rather how to put on to promote projects like yours, also in order to ensure sustainability. What I would suggest, and we can of course discuss it later, is that because you are looking for other municipalities that are also interested in your project, in your software, in your platform, is that we could try to see if through our urban agenda initiative, that is part of the action plan, to help you to find other local municipalities, other actors that would be interested. What we know, I mean, from what the feedback that we have is that most of the time it's the local level that is very interested in finding easy and adaptable solutions to their problems, because already with your pilot we saw that middle-sized cities are not the same as capital cities, so and also sometimes the proportions of migrants, their origins are different. So for instance, on the language side you have also to be flexible. So I would suggest that in order also to help you, the marketplace that you are trying to put in to make it work, this perhaps we could help you to also to put in contact with other municipalities, with other realities that can, I'm sure, can be interested in taking up your solution.
Thank you. I think this is the sentence that every project wants to hear, right? And it's very thankful. Do you want to add something?
Can I just add to this that I think this is really what is needed for this project, and I was lucky to have met you at another conference, this so close, and you conference in March, and you talked about digital litter. That concept stuck with me. The fear that many of these projects, you know, so well supported by the European funds, they just gonna feed into digital litter. So this was a concept I heard first from you. I don't know what if it's yours.
No, of course not. This is. That's I mean, actually, it's from theory, from the Turin Center of Research on Migration, and this is not something that is so new, because actually the first I saw this this concept out, it was because of the 2015-2016 crisis. There was a rush to put out website, mostly 1.0 and 2.0 logic, so mostly putting out information on the web in different languages in order to help the first wave of migrants in 2015-2016. And of course, the problem is the maintenance, as it was already mentioned. Is a big push, but after there is no follow-up, there is no maintenance, there is no, so to speak, because you need people that are taking care of these tools, because they don't work on their own. We saw, at least what we see is that again, because of COVID, there was again an outrush of tools, online tools, for this mostly on sanitary situation. And we already see that there was a problem between the first wave of COVID, where it was a bit, of course it was emergency, and the second wave, where basically people were more, first of all, we were more, we understood better the virus and so on and so forth, but between the first wave and the second wave, there was no adaptation of the first tools and apps that were put out. It was created a new array of, so this is like in space, when you launch a satellite after a satellite, you don't put out the old satellite and you just add, so this is, of course, is a problem of what you do, what you launch, and it remains, and it brings back to the other side of the digital divide. How do you help a migrant arriving to negotiate how to navigate a landscape that is more and more complex with some outdated information there. How do you discriminate and how you follow up? And in my view, unfortunately, there's no easy solution. But the online, in my view, has to go with offline support. And what was something that was mentioned by the MEP at the beginning, by MEP Sergei, but I don't remember, sorry, the surname, that in '93, there was this person going around with a typing machine, which is a computer without screen, I guess. But you have the same problem today. For certain categories, I'm not saying for everybody, but for certain categories of migrants, you need offline support with a person that helps you to, and this is not only a person helping you, is also providing you for hardware. Because sometimes, in order to navigate, you need a print. Sometimes you still need to print forms. So what also happened in '93 is still, in my view, still relevant today. Sometimes, for certain categories, you need an assistance, a human that helps you to navigate, and also that offers you a hardware. So I'm afraid that the days of somebody going with a typing machine have not gone. So you just have to improve what you offer in terms of support. But for certain categories of migrants, they still need a human touch and a hardware help, because if not, you are going to lose the people that are most in need of help. Even if, again, I repeat, I think that your product is very good. It checked all the right moves in terms of co-design and of being user-friendly, modularity, and so on and so forth. But still, I mean, putting out an app is not enough, because also you need to, if you lower the, so to speak, the threshold how to have access to the services, you also to some of the other side, you need to help them to eye up their skills and their capacities.
Thank you very much. We will come back to the topic of the view of migrants again, but also we talked about how to distribute our results to other European cities. And here, Maria, maybe you can share also some experience, since you have 4 mentor cities and 4 mentee cities. How easy is it to transfer, processes, already existing processes from one that apply in one city to other cities?
Yeah, thank you for the question, because this is actually one of the main points of the project. So, not easy. It's not an easy task. For several kind of reasons. Probably the main one is because the context is very different. Even though we are always talking about more or less middle-sized cities, we need to take into account the geographical areas from these cities, from the locality. So, for example, just take the example of Belgium. We have Mechelen, which is actually one of the best practices in Belgium. And Mechelen is paired with Capaci. There is a very small town in Sicily, in the south of Italy. And in terms of context, Capaci is, in a way, what Mechelen was 20 years ago. So the problem here is that Mechelen offers to Capaci, in terms of mentoring process, an enormous range of practices from which they can pick up the most suitable for them. But even though those practices are very basic somehow, for example, the buddy projects. Buddy projects is something that a lot of cities are doing from a long time now. The way of implementing buddy projects in Capaci is completely different from the Mechelen case, because the human resources are different. Mechelen has a lot of funding, a lot of resources, financial ones. Capaci has none of them. It's true that also Mechelen, for example, can rely a lot on volunteering work. And in Italy, in the always in the southern context, let's say, not always in Italy, but also in Spain and Greece, we have this volunteering work that is very active, volunteering sector that is very active, but it does not, is not enough. It's not enough. Also because both migrants and citizens, they need to work almost the entire day in order to run their existence, in order to have money. And so the time, the span that they have to do these activities are very limited, is very limited. So even though the practice is one of the best that we have in the project because it's simple, it's easy to reproduce, it's still very, very problematic to have replicated in a context like Capaci. And I was also, for example, I could also talk about the financial resources in general, because we also have Mentor Cities have as a final product of the project to do for one-stop shop. So this is also another feature of the project. And they are now currently into this process of designing, choosing the features of the apps, and we have four mentor cities. 3 of them are in Belgium, 1 is in Spain. It's Fuenlabrada municipality who will do this. And even though the 3 cities in Belgium have more or less the same capacity in terms of financial resources and in terms also of municipalities' resources, human resources, the outcomes of the work that they are doing will be completely different. Specifically for Belgian cases, this is also because of the overlapping of the competencies. So you have shared competencies in terms of migration management between the national government, the regional government, and the municipal government. So, for example, the ownership of the app. Who owns the app at the end of the process? And then who owns the app will be also the one who will be paying for it beyond the end of the project. So if on one side, all the three main actors of the city, so the municipality, the BAPA is the Office for Newcomers, and the Association of Local and Regional Governments want actually to own the app because it's good, it's visibility. On the other hand, they come across this problem of financing and who will finance at the end of it. So it's like a ping-pong kind of situation in which all of them really want to have the ownership of the app, but none of them has actually the financial means to run through the app. So this is also one of the problem in sharing also the best practices. We have Mechelen, who is actually doing a very, very intelligent move, that is to actually co-finance the app between 2 European projects. So what we are trying to do is to transfer this knowledge that they are using to the other cities who can actually do the same. But once again, it's easier to say than to put into practices. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. So we are all faced with some of the same challenges. Of course, for some you can't guarantee solutions for political changes in the regions. There is nothing you can do before to avoid changes in how the project is uptaken. But financing seems to be one of the main points that you have just raised, and also it is of course a main point in Hamburg. Who will finance MICADO maybe after the uptake? Will it be the social ministry? Will it be the NGOs that are involved, the Lavette Stiftung, the foundation that was mentioned? One thing that I would like to discuss as well is also in the uptaking process is that from my experience, this is my 5th Horizon project, we have always ended the projects with a good product or solution that we developed. But before MICADO, I was not aware that there is some kind of months in the end of the project for the uptaking process. And Jörg explained to me that we have actually reserved half a year. The solution was almost ready half a year ago, so we had the last 6 months to really focus on the uptaking process. But I mentioned it before, we are all researchers, we are all from different institutions, from the administration, but what is clearly lacking in many Horizon projects from my point is somebody who really knows business and who knows how to sell these products not only to different regions but to the administrations. We were asked for a business case by the social ministry, which was okay, let's do a business case. It was the first time we did that. We had to deliver some numbers, some, what will MICADO, how much will it cost in the future? And this is something I would wish for in other projects as well. Maybe you wanted to comment on this, yeah?
Yeah, to the extent, I mean, that from what I understand, that because from the start, so to speak, this project is how to make more user-friendly public administration information, or at least how to distribute in a more transparent, but is still with an eye to public administration, locally or regional. So of course, I mean, public administrations have constraints. I mean, I'm quite aware of them now, working at the European Commission, but how you can, because this brings me also to something that I'm very happy about the focus that you had on providing information on housing, health, employment, education, because these are the four areas of the action plan. These are for us the building blocks for integration. You need to sort out your housing, your work, health, and so on and so forth. But something that really was brought to my attention, and is something that, because it's true that public services are digitalizing more and more, but also, and I think we experience it, everybody of us, also the private sector is digitalizing a lot in terms of banking services, of all sorts of issues. And sometimes this is really also a real problem for migrants. Can be refugees, can be everybody. How do they get information out, for instance, for e-banking services, or how we see now with Ukrainians, how one of the first things that we give to Ukrainian citizens, people fleeing the war in Ukraine, is a chip card to update their mobile phone and to be able to navigate without extra. So, in my view, but this, of course, I mean, is also that there is a problem about private digital services, banking, communication, and so on and so forth. So perhaps this is also something that it could be, from a non-arbitrary, non-discriminatory way, something that also could think how you can provide information, how, for instance, for banks, for migrants, how to have access to, and this perhaps is also something that the private sector would like to support, because migrants are also clients as anybody else, as customers as anybody else. But of course, I mean, if your project is looking specifically at the public administration, are the final the intermediaries that have to take up your product, of course, you run in problems, because there are not only financial but also administrative issues there.
I didn't want to interrupt you. This is very interesting, and I was just thinking about something related to that paradoxically, I think the private sector has been able to invest more on migrants earlier than the public one, because they understood better that migrants can actually also, use the digital resources. For example, the remittances issue, you know that, right? So much of the internet banking was developed to allow sending money from one country or from one continent to the other. So the evidence is that migrants are usually the most well-educated of the countries they come from. There are fringes of very poor and uneducated, but the larger majority of migrants that come to Europe, at least, are those that they are better educated and they are better resources than the countries they come from, both in terms of cultural and social capital. And the one thing that we need to understand is that public services are not fully grasping the potential of what that means, because you're entirely right to say we have MICADO, but there are many people that don't have mobile phones. But those many people, those migrants you're talking about are also, and this is again a lot of evidence from the literature, from the sociological literature, are very well connected within a network of relations that support traditionally their experiences. So if you have an older migrant, there will be a younger migrant behind it, him or her, that will support their use of the online services. And another thing that we have experienced with MICADO is that it's true that the face-to-face human interaction you were talking about is important for some groups of migrants. But this group of migrants, they go to the NGOs, or to the mediators, to the cultural mediators. And it takes an hour to the cultural mediator to explain to the migrant that you're talking about that there is such and such a service in the city. And he has to repeat it on and on again, okay? Such a waste of time. But if he can show the app and say, look at this, it's in your language. Look at this, if you can't read it, there is also an audio speaker. That cultural mediator takes 1/5 of the time. So let's not underestimate the potential, despite acknowledging all the limitations that you have made. And this is what we experience in Bologna now. Everyone is so interested in this app, but who is gonna update the information? Whose servers are we gonna host it? And who is taking responsibility, for public administration are already overwhelmed by their work, and this is yet another task for them. They should dedicate a special unit to that. And this is the problem with MICADO in Bologna now, that we are at the point that we are finalizing all these important elements, and the project is ending. And the uptake activities were great. I think I also learned that MICADO, compared to other European projects, was so well thought that they had included this uptake work package, the dedicated work package for sustainability and uptake that not many other projects have, as far as I understand. But perhaps it was too short. Perhaps it was too short. We needed more time.
We should get projects just to uptake other results. This uptaking takes time. It's not just, in my view, an issue of showing how good solutions are. It's an issue of learning, and the learning at different organizational levels of complexity. So at the level of service provision, at the level of an entire public organization, at the level of who writes the documents. So takes time. This is sometimes a problem. Sometimes this is what we need to consider, that for learning is relevant for persistent change, and we need to give time to this. So I am not scared by this. What I am scared is that I think we should be aware that not any of the solutions we are developing in this problem, in this project, to me is a problem because I am the coordinator. So by the way, all the solutions we are developing in this project will be the solution, the one that will give the answer to everything. Because I think that, and it's clear from what you say, we need for the same problems different solutions, because people in front of the problems are different. They need different solutions, even the same solutions to be offered in different manners, from human beings or from digital agents, or one of the small problems we had to solve in the EasyRights was this, how to make immigrants to register to the compulsory English course that they have to go through in Birmingham. That's one of our pilots. And okay, there was no better way to go for those that we were in contact with, the migrants who co-designed the solutions with us. We would need someone to guide us to do the registration for that. So you can develop the whatever perfect interface, because one of the key issues is that they are scared to fail. they are scared to fail. Their way to stay in front of a service is always that they feel, even when they are regular, formally speaking, they feel irregular. They feel out of the right contexts for them. So they are always scared that they can fail through procedures. So that was incredible, an incredible discovery for us, because they change the countries. They get in a countries which I have to agree with you. They really don't hope it's just made of interfaces. Come on, I would hate it, and after COVID I would hate it even more. And I think that we have to guarantee different access modes for them to achieve, to do what they have to and what they need to. And this is why I think that, my project officer is not there, but the project officer, one of the two, guided us to cope. This is one of the big challenges. So the solution that you were quoting, that different projects were trying to merge solutions to become synergic, also because they are different. So, and they have having the chance to make them together, to offer for the same problems, different solutions. So we have to develop a landscape of access points for them, not just one. This would be the perfect mistake to be done in this perspective. I think we really need to multiply the access, and this could be one uptake solution for many of our developments.
Thank you very much. I totally agree, and I think this is also why the European Commission has encouraged us for some years now to strengthen the exchange between the projects from the same call, and there are also meetings to get these synergies. So I think we could continue for hours, but we also want to give the audience the chance to raise some questions and to involve everybody into the discussion. 1 or 2 questions. I'm getting the instructions, but also we have the networking lunch afterwards for more discussions. So anybody who has a question right now? Yes, please. Ist da noch ein Mikrofon?
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Francesco Molinari. I belong to the EasyRights project. After listening to this second panel, I am even more sure about the statement that someone makes that the concept of entropy can more easily found in public administration than in the second law of thermodynamics. What we have been discussing about today is a very nice and attractive system to gather information which is originally dispersed across very many different sources. My original question before the break, let's say, was about these sources and the way the machine or the software does this aggregation, because it could make a lot of difference if after the final deployment of this solution, we would need to set up an editorial team, because in many experiences we all have of similar systems deployed, for example, for tourists coming to big cities. What the city hall must do is to set up a dedicated editorial team to keep the information updated. And given the delicate nature of the information on display in systems like this for the audience that we all have in mind, it would be twice as important or needed that this editorial team works and checks what needs to be done in a very frequent way. Which brings me back to the point raised by many of you that we cannot commit entirely to technology, the solution to problems which have to do a lot with human beings. But the very reason for my comment, more than a question, was to raise the final point of monitoring and evaluating what we are doing. I was curious already while listening to the presentations from the cities. I was curious about knowing if above and beyond the common approaches which you first designed and then implemented very nicely for the integration of user requirements in the design of this solution, there has also been a common approach to setting up a monitoring and evaluation system. Because what we also need, especially if we want to continue being the best supporters of the solutions we are developing, and I'm also speaking of the solutions developed in EasyRights, what we certainly need is not only political endorsement, but also to be very convincing, also in the eyes of the politicians, that what we are doing is fruitful. Fruitful to whom? Fruitful why? Fruitful how? There is a pre and post introduction of these technologies which we need to document and speak about. So my point is, in this uncertain situation where entropy prevails, why don't we do an extra effort on evaluation and measurement of technology impacts? In that regard, as Professor Concilio said before, we are developing a standard in this project, and we would love having you on board this team, because we are trying to develop exactly what is missing, at least in our point of view and in our project, that is a way to measure how effective and how change-making we are being with the solutions that we are developing. Thank you so much.
Anybody who wants to comment? Jörg, maybe? The good news is that we will all be there after the project, so we will be happy to engage.
Certainly one of the most crucial but most ambitious tasks to establish these frameworks for impact assessment. We know that is a key challenge, I think, in many of the projects to trace what kind of footprint, what kind of change was enacted by these projects, especially over a long time. But we are dealing with effects, we are dealing with issues that have a long time nature. We know that, especially in the migration context, issues will come up again. There will be the next migration wave coming, and it would be fantastic to have evidence which of these approaches, which of the technologies, which of the instruments we provide, also the non-technological ones, really have an impact. So we happily subscribe being a kind of lab rat guinea pig for your study if it's coming up, and let's see how MICADO would perform there in the longer run. Is this already being implemented? Is this running? Then we can sign up directly.
And can I also quickly add to that? Class is very short. That we did have in our piloting survey some questions to access exactly that kind of information, to see how much the migrant users appreciated it. And all across the pilot cities we had positive, very, very positive response. It's a micro evaluation, but still we can make it count. And plus we have a very good Countly software application included in our app that basically monitor the clicks that users do. And we did see that when we promoted the application during the piloting, the public piloting, the number of clicks raised exponentially. And in Bologna, we want now to have a similar monitoring system to see when the integration goes live with the Bologna welfare app, and the clicks will direct back to MICADO. So there are elements in the short-term micro level for evaluating that as well.
Thank you very much. I'm so sorry, but I have to interrupt this energetic discussion now because we are running to the end of our event. But, as I said, we can continue during